Don't be an activist, just be an artist. Hey, it's Prince of Queens, and we live in confusing times. If you ever manage to get things even slightly figured out politically, it won't probably be until well into your 30s, unless you are exceptionally bright and have some amazing mentors in political science. And even then, you'll lack the real life experience to truly understand the physics of politics. Sure, you can learn a massive amount from history if you are a total bookworm, and you can observe a lot of these trends on the internet in real time. But in order to really see the bigger picture, you have to live through two political administrations that you were paying more or less your best attention to. Maybe not all the time, but at least pay attention to politics a little bit. And then you see how the world changes when we have different presidents in office. It's not just that the times change, there's the obvious. Wars start, wars end, they shift to drone strikes, the war on drugs starts and never ends, the shootings in Chicago never go away, people blame police for all of the problems in America, while the shootings in Chicago tend to get worse and worse, etc., etc. All of that definitely does happen, but even further than that, culture just changes. In the 1990s, Generation Xers were not as politically obsessed as the millennials are. Sure, a lot of them were vegetarians and vegans. Some of them we'd call tree huggers because the Democratic Party's big platform was environmentalism in the 90s. And then some of them fought to end the spread of HIV, and some fought for positivity within the black community during the early years of gangster rap. However, for the most part, the Gen Xers of the 1990s were a lot more concerned with sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Seriously, ask anybody that lived through the time and really remembers it. The political stuff almost unanimously came backseat to the music shows and raves, and everybody was screwing their brains out. Are millennials even really having sex anymore? I honestly can't even tell. I don't know. I have to wonder if there is a hormone deficiency epidemic, but all of that is besides my point. What I'm trying to get across is that when you're a young person, 99 times out of 100, or even 999 times out of 1,000, you simply won't be making a difference with political activism. It's just not gonna happen. Jordan Peterson has been talking about this quite a lot, but it's something that I have been saying for well over a decade myself, because of the fact that I have known hundreds and hundreds of left-wing activists over the course of my adult life. Wait, sorry, what am I talking about? I knew these people when I was a kid. Like a fairly little kid. And really, these people are sad to me in the way that they often base a seemingly large or maybe a majority percentage of their time and social energy around protesting in an age where I don't think anybody can actually point to a single instance of protest activism that actually achieved anything in the Western world. At least for over a generation. Seriously, when was the last time in recorded history that left-wing protesters in the Western world took to the streets to show their disapproval of the system and formed camaraderie and solidarity with each other in order to say, enough is enough, and they actually got what they wanted? Sorry, got anything they wanted. When was the last time that this happened? Was it Vietnam? Did they end the Vietnam War? Or was that going to end anyway? It's hard to say. Certainly, no left-wing protest activism has ever achieved anything substantial in my lifetime regarding anything that I have personally cared about. The only activist activity that I've engaged in that might have had an impact was when I phone banked from New York City to call some Bible Belt state to remind people to vote down a flagrantly anti-gay bill, and it was defeated by a narrow margin. But of course, week after week, we have the white kids in the streets carrying signs, allegedly fighting the very system that allowed them the freedom and free time to be carrying the sign in the first place. And they get to feel like they are radical, call themselves radical, and have after parties that you are probably not really welcome at if you cannot prove that you're radical. It's beyond repetitive. And while it has been going on increasingly since the 1960s, but mostly really increasing in the 1990s and in the past 6 years, especially in certain areas like the Bay Area of Northern California, which is where Berkeley is, even more so, it's grown exponentially, probably due to Obama legalizing the usage of propaganda on the American people in 2012 by overturning the Smith-Mundt Act. Still, I never once really fell for it personally. I can say very proudly. I stopped showing up to protests when I was a teenager before I even got to college, and I did so for the reasons that I described. Protests never did anything. They were very obviously their own little government-funded economy organized by a few professional activists who got paid to rally a few kids like myself, and after I saw this enough times without fully understanding my observations, I wanted no part of it. If you want to go ahead and raise money for cancer research, hospice care, homeless shelters, and that kind of thing, that's great. And if you want to raise awareness for the gender-specific issues of men and boys, because it's an actual real civil rights issue, and maybe even go so far as to lend your help to the falsely accused, that is an awesome and necessary form of activism in the current year. However, that stuff isn't really so much fun for young people, now is it? You don't get to show up to a men's rights activist protest with a sign to be greeted by a bunch of like-minded comrades that are all ready to smash that thing that needs to be smashed together without any legitimate opposition. I mean, do they even have men's rights activist protests ever? No, of course not. And if they do, they're heavily counter-protested, usually violently. But hey, if you are a men's rights activist, at least you might as well be doing something that could tangibly get something done if you persevere, right? Now, of course, I'm not expecting most young people to actually fight for systemically denied human rights and become men's rights advocates. No, that would be asking way too much from people. Instead, I just want you to do the bare minimum, which would be to take my advice and do what I actually personally did when I was in college. And just stop ever referring to yourself as an activist. You don't have to call yourself an activist. Instead, you can call yourself an artist, maybe. Perhaps just be a writer or a musician or a video maker. Whatever you think is most appropriate. You can say that you're a student. It's not that hard. You see, to call yourself an activist is an extremely arrogant statement. Much more so than an artist. I mean, a lot of people say that they're an artist, but they haven't really made any art. That's kind of arrogant too, but not as arrogant as saying that you're an activist. Like, what are you activating? What change are you making? Come on. I mean, are you changing the world? Probably not. Are you changing the world for the better? Almost certainly not. Would you even know where to begin? Don't kid yourself. I say this. Instead of making signs and smashing windows while pretending that you know fuck about shit, you should just accept that you don't know fuck about shit. And instead, maybe make some music. Maybe ramble on a blog or on YouTube or just chat on social media. Or draw a lot and maybe make some animation if you can learn how. You don't have to know anything about anything to get good at illustrating. Further than that, do you have to know anything to start a YouTube channel and start giving your opinions? Of course not. I'm in my 30s and I still occasionally get stuff wrong and end up admitting later that I've changed my mind about stuff. But hey, I never smashed a window or pepper sprayed anybody because of these opinions, so I guess I'm cool, right? When I was in my 20s and early 30s, I was asked to perform at all sorts of activist shows, not uncommonly. I would do them because, hey, it was a show. Half the time, the people putting them together were wackos. And if I tried to get to know them, I ended up hating them. Still, it was okay for me to be a part of that for a while. Why? Because I never claimed to be an activist myself. The activists thought that they were smart enough to think that they had the solution to all the world's problems, or something, and I might have been kind of stupid, but I knew better than that. I was smart enough to be somewhat self-aware about my intellectual shortcomings. I was just a guy who made music and theater, and some people liked it and thought it had a political message, which I often didn't really think it had, but whatever. If they wanted to give me a platform, I'd gladly take it. Now, is there always going to be a platform for young people? Absolutely not, of course. They won't even usually have platforms or the venues. There's not usually going to be venues or opportunities for you to show your artwork or to play a show. But hey, there's nothing to stop you from getting together with your friends and making some beats on your computer and rapping together. Why not just do that? It's not really all that hard to learn how to make hip-hop music, though it's massively hard to learn how to do it well. It will also keep you out of trouble when somebody tries to get you to show up and pepper spray innocent people at free speech rallies. It's better to make hip-hop than to make Antifa. And as you go along with a music career, you'll start to learn about politics through osmosis, as the times will change eventually. You'll start to see politics affect the music scene, and then things will start to make more sense to you, so that by the time you're in your 30s, maybe you will want to focus a bit on talking about politics. But if you are anything like I was, you won't simply want to do it. Rather, you'll do it because you feel like you have to do it. When I made my YouTube channel, I felt like I had to. I didn't really want to. I just want to write scripts. Seriously. I'm going to retire into relative obscurity. You're never going to hear the sound of my voice again, hopefully, at some point. That's all I have to say for this video. If this made you feel good in some way and you'd like to donate some money to me, I do need it. You can send me something on PayPal or sign up to give me monthly donations on Patreon. Links in the description.